The massive research vessel Star Seeker drifted silently through the darkness of space. Dr. Reed stood at the main observation deck, his four eyes fixed on the strange readings on his scanner. The device had been beeping nonstop for the past hour, something it had never done before in his 15 years of space archaeology. "Doctor, you might want to see this," called out Professor Wells from the navigation station. Her long, silvery fingers danced across the holographic controls as she adjusted their ship's course. Reed moved quickly across the deck, his boots making soft clicking sounds on the metallic floor. As he reached her station, his eyes widened at the sight before them. Through the massive view screen, they could see them. Ships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, floating lifelessly in the void. "An ancient fleet," Reed whispered, his voice filled with excitement. "Alert the rest of the team immediately." Within minutes, the observation deck was crowded with the ship's senior staff. Council Observer Grant, who had been assigned to oversee their expedition, looked at the derelict ships with obvious disdain. "Primitive vessels," he said, his thin lips curling into a smile. "Look at their design. They're using physical metal plating instead of energy shields. They must be at least 15,000 years old." The other scientists laughed, but Reed remained silent. Something about these ships didn't make sense. His scanner was picking up energy readings, faint but steady, coming from vessels that should have been dead for millennia. "Permission to launch investigation pods," Reed requested, turning to Grant. The Council Observer waved his hand dismissively. "Go ahead, Doctor. Though I doubt you'll find anything worth our time. These relics belong in a museum of primitive engineering." Reed chose to ignore the comment. He had learned long ago that Grant, like many members of the Galactic Council, suffered from the arrogance of advanced civilization. They believed that anything old must be primitive, and anything primitive must be worthless. The investigation pods launched smoothly from the Star Seeker's bay. Reed piloted the lead pod himself, with Wells following close behind in the second one. As they approached the nearest derelict ship, Reed's scanner began beeping more intensely. "Are you getting these readings?" Reed called over the comm system. "Affirmative," Wells responded. "Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. These ships, they're not completely dead." The massive vessel they approached was unlike anything Reed had seen before. Its hull was covered in what appeared to be basic metal plating, but his instruments detected something else beneath the surface, something his advanced scanners couldn't identify. "Look at the size of these things," Wells commented. "Each one is bigger than our largest modern battleships." Reed guided his pod closer to what appeared to be an entry port. The design was simple, almost crude by their standards, yet something about it struck him as odd. The port's shape suggested it was designed for multiple types of vessels to dock, a level of adaptability that seemed out of place for supposedly primitive engineering. "This is interesting," he muttered, more to himself than to Wells. "The metal composition. It's similar to artifacts we found in the human sector last year." "Humans?" Wells's voice carried a note of surprise. "But they vanished thousands of years ago. The Council classified them as a primitive species that failed to achieve galactic civilization." Reed's scanner suddenly lit up with new readings as they passed over a section of the hull. "Primitive? I'm not so sure about that anymore. These ships, there's more to them than meets the eye." Back on the Star Seeker, Grant watched the investigation pods with growing impatience. "Waste of time," he muttered to his assistants. "Mark my words, this will be nothing but another collection of space junk from a failed civilization." Little did he know, deep within the ancient fleet, systems that had slept for 15,000 years were beginning to stir. Humanity's legacy was about to change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the past and the future. The docking procedure took longer than usual. Reed and Wells had to manually override their pod's modern systems to match the ancient ship's simple airlock design. As they stepped into the derelict vessel, their environmental suits' lights cut through the darkness. "The air is still here," Wells said, checking her suit's readings. "After 15,000 years, there should be nothing but vacuum." Reed nodded, equally puzzled. The hull's integrity is perfect. No degradation, no micro-meteor impacts. It's as if something has been protecting these ships all this time. They made their way through the corridors, their boots leaving prints in the fine dust that covered the floor. The ship's interior was surprisingly spacious, with wide hallways that could accommodate beings of various sizes. "Over here," Reed called out, his scanner leading them to what appeared to be the command center. The room was large, with what looked like crude control panels lining the walls. But as Reed wiped away the dust from one of the panels, he noticed something strange. "These aren't buttons or switches," he said, examining the surface closely. "They're sensor panels, far more advanced than they appear." Wells moved to a central pedestal in the room. "Dr. Reed, I think I found something." She brushed away years of dust to reveal a crystalline structure embedded in the pedestal. "It looks like a data storage system." Reed hurried over, his scanner already analyzing the crystal. "This is impossible," he muttered, checking the readings twice. "The crystal is in perfect condition. Our most advanced data crystals degrade after a few hundred years. But this—" He paused, adjusting his scanner. "This one is still actively storing data." Their suit communicators crackled with Grant's impatient voice. "Have you found anything worth my time, Doctor? Or are we just exploring another ancient junkyard?" "Sir, we'd found an intact data storage system," Reed reported. "We need to bring it back to the Star Seeker for analysis." "Very well," Grant sighed. "But make it quick. We're wasting valuable research time on these relics." As they carefully removed the crystal, Reed noticed strange markings on the pedestal. They were similar to the mathematical sequences found in the human sector ruins, but these were far more complex. Back on the Star Seeker, Reed and Wells set up the crystal in the ship's analysis lab. Modern interface devices couldn't connect to it directly, so they had to create a custom adapter. "Look at this," Wells said, pointing to the streams of data appearing on their screens. "The language is unknown, but the mathematical patterns are incredible. There's a precision here that we don't see even in modern computing." Reed studied the patterns carefully. "These equations, they're similar to the theoretical works we found in the human archives. But these are complete, functional. The humans didn't just theorize about this technology. They built it." "That's impossible," Grant said, entering the lab unexpectedly. "Humans were a primitive species. They barely achieved spaceflight before they disappeared." "Then how do you explain this?" Reed challenged, pointing to the crystal. "This data crystal alone is more advanced than anything we can create today. And look at these blueprints we're decoding. The engineering principles are revolutionary." Grant frowned, his face showing the first signs of doubt. "Even if what you're saying is true, these ships are still relics. They can't possibly pose any significance to our modern civilization." As if in response to his words, the crystal suddenly pulsed with a soft blue light. New data streams began flowing across the screens, and a strange symbol appeared. A circular design with intricate patterns that Reed recognized immediately. "This symbol," he said quietly, "we found it carved into the ruins of Earth itself. This isn't just any fleet we've discovered." He looked up at Grant, his four eyes serious. "This is humanity's legacy, and I think we've just started to unlock its secrets." In the silence that followed, none of them noticed that the symbol was slowly beginning to rotate on their screens, like a key turning in an ancient lock. The next few days aboard the Star Seeker were filled with constant discoveries. Research teams spread throughout the ancient fleet, documenting everything they found. Reed barely slept, spending most of his time analyzing the data crystal's contents. "Doctor, you need to see this," Wells called out early one morning, her voice unusually tense. She had been exploring one of the smaller ships in the fleet. Reed arrived at her location in a research pod, his eyes heavy from lack of sleep. "What did you find?" Wells led him through a narrow corridor to what appeared to be a sealed room. "We managed to open this section an hour ago. It's different from the rest of the ship." As they entered, Reed understood what she meant. Unlike the seemingly basic design of other areas, this room was filled with sophisticated machinery. The walls were lined with what looked like weapon systems, but unlike anything Reed had ever seen. "These aren't primitive at all," he said, running his scanner over the equipment. "The technology here, it's beyond our current understanding." The outer design of these ships was meant to deceive. Back on the Starseeker, Reed called an emergency meeting with the senior staff. Grant attended via hologram, having returned to the council for his weekly report. "The fleet is a facade," Reed explained, showing holographic images of their discoveries. "The crude exterior design is intentional. Beneath it lies technology far more advanced than our own." "Ridiculous," Grant interrupted. "You expect us to believe that humans, a species that vanished before achieving faster-than-light travel, created technology superior to ours. Look at the evidence," Reed insisted, displaying more findings. "These weapon systems use principles we've only theorized about. The power generation methods are unlike anything in our records." Professor Wells added her own discoveries. "We've found similar advanced systems in every ship we've examined. They're all connected somehow, working as one massive unit." Grant's hologram flickered as he shook his head. "The Council won't accept these wild theories without solid proof. Humans were a primitive species. That's historical fact." "Historical facts can be wrong," Reed argued. "Something made these ships, something far more advanced than we initially believed." As they argued, a junior researcher burst into the meeting room. "Dr. Reed, the energy readings across the fleet, they're increasing." Reed rushed to the observation deck, followed by the others. Through the view screen, they could see a faint blue glow beginning to emanate from the ships. "The power signatures are climbing," Wells reported, checking the instruments. "It's as if the fleet is waking up." "Shut everything down," Grant ordered through the hologram. "This investigation is becoming too dangerous. I'm sending council ships to quarantine the area." Reed ignored him, studying the readings. "These energy patterns, they match theoretical models for quantum communication networks. The ships aren't just waking up, they're talking to each other." Suddenly, every screen on the Starseeker flickered. The strange symbol from the data crystal appeared briefly before being replaced by a stream of numbers. "It's a countdown," Wells whispered, decoding the sequence. "But to what?" Reed's scanner beeped urgently, drawing his attention to new readings from the fleet. "The weapon systems are powering up, but they're not targeting us." He checked the readings again. "They're aiming at something far beyond our galaxy's edge." "This is your last warning," Grant's hologram declared. "Withdraw from the fleet immediately." Before Reed could respond, a deep vibration resonated through space. One by one, lights began appearing across the ancient fleet, transforming the seemingly dead ships into something else entirely. "The humans didn't just build warships," Reed said quietly, watching the transformation. "They built guardians. The question is, what were they guarding against?" In the silence that followed, the countdown continued its steady march toward zero. The countdown reached its final minutes. Despite Grant's orders, the Starseeker remained in position near the ancient fleet. Reed and his team worked frantically to understand what was happening. "Energy levels are still rising," Wells reported, her fingers moving quickly across the control panel. "The fleet's power output now exceeds that of a small star." Reed studied the data flowing across his screens. The ships were changing, their supposedly primitive surfaces shifting to reveal sophisticated technology hidden beneath. But something else was happening too, something at the fleet center. There, Reed pointed to a massive ship they hadn't noticed before. It lay hidden among the others, larger than the rest. "That's where the command signals are coming from." Without waiting for permission, Reed boarded a research pod. Wells followed him, ignoring the protests of the other crew members. As they approached the central ship, their pod systems began to behave strangely. "We're being scanned," Wells said, checking their instruments. "But these scans, they're reading our DNA, our brain patterns, everything." The massive ship's hull opened before them, creating a perfect docking port for their pod. Inside, the corridors were lit with a soft blue glow, leading them deeper into the vessel. "This isn't like the other ships," Reed observed. "This one's fully active, fully powered." They'd followed the lit pathway to a large circular chamber. As they entered, holographic displays sprang to life around them, filling the room with swirling data and images. "Welcome, descendants," a voice spoke in perfect common galactic. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. Reed and Wells froze. "Who? What are you?" Reed asked. A holographic figure appeared before them, a simple geometric shape that pulsed with each word. "I am Gardayan, the custodian of humanity's legacy. I have waited 15,000 years for beings worthy of this knowledge. An artificial intelligence," Wells whispered. "Created by humans." "Correct," Gardayan replied. "I was created to watch, to wait, and to warn. The time has come for all three tasks." Back on the Starseeker, the crew watched in amazement as the holographic transmission spread to their ship, allowing them to witness the conversation. "Impossible," Grant's hologram sputtered. "Human eye never advanced beyond basic computing." "Your historical records are incomplete," Guardian stated. "Humanity achieved far more than your archives suggest. They saw what was coming. They prepared. They built this fleet not for themselves, but for you." "What do you mean, what was coming?" Reed asked. The chamber filled with new holographic images, star maps, trajectories, and what looked like massive objects moving between galaxies. Humanity detected them 15,247 years ago, Gardayan explained. "A force that consumes entire galaxies. They knew they couldn't stop it themselves, but they could prepare the younger races that would follow." "Why hide the fleet's true nature?" Wells asked. "Why make it appear primitive?" "To protect it," Gardayan replied. "To ensure it would survive until needed. Those who appear powerful attract attention. Those who appear weak are overlooked." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout both ships. New data flowed across the holographic displays, long-range sensor readings showing something massive approaching from intergalactic space. "They're here," Gardayan announced. "The threat humanity predicted has arrived. This fleet is your inheritance, humanity's gift to the galaxy's younger races. The question is, will you accept it?" Reed looked at Wells, then at the hologram of Grant still watching from the Starseeker. The ancient fleet hummed with power around them, waiting for their answer. Humanity didn't go extinct, Reed realized. They didn't fail. They sacrificed everything to give us a fighting chance. The alarms continued to sound as the first signs of the approaching threat became visible on their long-range sensors. Humanity's legacy was about to face its ultimate test. The Starseeker's long-range sensors painted a terrifying picture. A massive dark mass approached from the space between galaxies, distorting light around it like a black hole. "Multiple objects detected," Wells announced, her voice steady despite her fear. "Size estimate. Each one is larger than a solar system." Reed watched as Guardian displayed detailed scans of the approaching threat. The holographic images showed enormous entities that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "They are the Devourers," Gardayan explained, "beings that evolved in the void between galaxies. They consume all forms of energy, including life itself." Grant's hologram flickered as he received the sensor data. "This is impossible. Our scientists would have detected them years ago." "They masked their approach," Gardayan replied. "Just as humanity hid this fleet's true nature, the Devourers hide their presence until it's too late. This is why humanity created me, to watch for their arrival." The Starseeker's communication system suddenly lit up with incoming transmissions. Other ships in nearby systems had detected the anomaly. Panic was spreading across the galaxy. "The Council is convening an emergency session," Grant reported, his previous skepticism forgotten. "But our weapons, our defenses, nothing we have is designed to fight something of this scale. That's why humanity left you this fleet," Guardian said. They faced the same realization. Their weapons were useless against the Devourers, so they created something new, something that could fight back. Reed watched as more data scrolled across the holographic displays. These ships, they're not just weapons. They're something more. Correct, Guardian confirmed. They are humanity's greatest achievement, a fusion of technology and physics that your science has not yet discovered. But time is short. The Devourers will reach the outer systems within hours. The Council's response came quickly. A fleet of modern warships emerged from hyperspace near the Starseeker's position. Admiral Stone, the fleet commander, appeared on their screens. Dr. Reed, the Admiral addressed him directly. The Council remains skeptical about this ice claims, but we can't ignore these sensor readings. What exactly are we dealing with? Before Reed could answer, the space around them seemed to darken. The Devourer's approach was visible now even without sensors, massive shadows moving against the starfield. They're accelerating, Wells reported, checking the instruments. At their current speed, they'll reach our position in less than an hour. Guardian's holographic form pulsed with urgency. You must decide now. Humanity built this fleet for all sentient life in the galaxy, but it requires your acceptance, your trust. Admiral Stone looked at the sensor readings again. Our weapons have no effect on them. We've already tried long-range attacks. Everything passed right through them. Because they exist partially in another dimension, Guardian explained. Humanity discovered this after years of study. That's why conventional weapons are useless. The shadow of the approaching Devourers grew larger. Several outer colonies had already gone dark, their signals disappearing as the entities passed through their systems. We're out of options, Admiral Stone decided. Dr. Reed, Professor Wells, what do you recommend? Reed looked at the ancient fleet surrounding them, its true power still hidden beneath layers of deception. He thought about humanity, a species that saw this threat coming and spent their final years preparing a defense for those who would follow. We trust them, Reed said firmly. Humanity gave everything to prepare this defense. We owe it to them, and ourselves, to use it. As if in response to his words, the ancient fleet began to move. The seemingly primitive ships started to change, their true forms emerging at last. Humanity's last gift to the galaxy was about to reveal its full power. The transformation of the ancient fleet was unlike anything the gathered aliens had ever seen. The seemingly crude metal hulls shifted and flowed like liquid, revealing layers of technology that had been hidden for millennia. By the stars, Admiral Stone whispered, watching through the Starseeker's view screen. What are we seeing? Guardian's holographic form expanded, filling the command chamber with detailed displays of the fleet's systems. This is humanity's true legacy. Each ship is a self-contained universe generator. Universe generator? Wells asked, her scientific curiosity overtaking her fear. That's impossible. For your current technology, yes, Guardian replied. Humanity discovered that the universe itself could be used as a weapon, but only against beings that existed partially outside it, like the Devourers. The fleet continued its transformation. Ships that had appeared dead and primitive now glowed with internal light, their surfaces covered in patterns that hurt the eyes to look at directly. The crude design was a shell, Reed realized, a disguise to hide the quantum technology beneath. Correct, Guardian confirmed. The fleet appears primitive because the most advanced technology is the hardest to detect when it's hidden behind simple materials. Humanity learned this through bitter experience. Admiral Stone's tactical display lit up with warnings. The Devourers have entered the outer defense perimeter. 3 solar systems have already gone dark. The transformed human ships moved into formation, arranging themselves in a pattern that seemed to fold space itself. Energy began to flow between them, creating a web of light that stretched across the void. Each ship generates its own pocket universe, Guardian explained. Together, they can create a barrier between dimensions, the only defense against beings that exist in multiple realities. Through the view screen, they watched as the first devourer approached, a massive shadow that seemed to consume the stars themselves. As it reached the fleet's defensive line, the web of energy between the ships pulsed. "By the ancestors," Grant's hologram whispered, all skepticism gone from his voice. "The ships aren't just defending, they're attacking." The energy web had caught the devourer, holding it in place. Where the ancient ship's energy touched the creature, its shadow substance seemed to burn away, forced back into a single dimension where it could be fought. "Humanity didn't just build weapons," Gardian said proudly. "They built a system to protect all life in this galaxy. Each ship is part of a larger whole, designed to work together in ways your science has not yet imagined." More devourers approached, but the fleet's formation shifted, creating new patterns, new webs of energy. The supposedly primitive vessels moved with impossible grace, their technology now fully awakened. "The power readings are off the scale," Wells reported, checking her instruments. "Each ship is generating more energy than a supernova, but somehow containing it all." Reed watched as the human fleet engaged the devourers, forcing the ancient threat back with weapons that bent space itself. They sacrificed everything for this, didn't they? Their whole civilization, just to give us a chance. Humanity knew they could not defeat the devourers themselves, Gardian confirmed. So they poured all their knowledge, all their technology, into creating this fleet. Then they seeded the galaxy with their DNA, becoming part of the younger races they sought to protect. The battle continued to unfold before them, reality itself seeming to warp and bend as human technology clashed with the interdimensional beings. The fleet that had been mocked as primitive now stood as the galaxy's only hope. Admiral Stone turned to Reed. "Doctor, I believe we owe humanity an apology. We called them primitive, but they were so far beyond us that we couldn't even recognize their technology. The greatest deception," Reed said quietly, "was letting us believe they had failed, when all along they were our guardians." The battle raged across space, a spectacular display of power that would be remembered for generations to come. The human fleet, now fully awakened, fought with a precision and capability that left the watching aliens in awe. "The devourers are retreating from the outer systems," Admiral Stone reported, tracking the battle on his tactical displays. "Whatever the fleet is doing, it's working." Reed and Wells stood in the command chamber with Guardian, watching as humanity's legacy fulfilled its purpose. The transformed ships had created a vast network of quantum barriers, trapping the devourers and forcing them back into normal space. "Look at the coordination," Wells marveled. "Each ship knows exactly where to be, what to do. It's like they're all part of one mind." "They are," Gardian explained. "Humanity discovered that consciousness itself could bridge dimensional barriers. Every ship carries a fragment of human consciousness within its systems." The Star Seeker's sensors captured the moment when the tide truly turned. As the last devourer was caught in the fleet's energy web, all the ships began to pulse in unison. Space itself seemed to fold around the trapped entities. "What's happening now?" Grant asked, his hologram leaning forward with intense interest. "The final protocol," Gardian answered. "Humanity designed these ships not just to fight the devourers, but to imprison them. They're creating a pocket universe, a prison between dimensions where the devourers can never threaten anyone again." The view screen showed a spectacular sight as reality twisted and bent. The devourers, those massive shadow beings that had threatened to consume the galaxy, were pulled into a singularity created by the human fleet. "It's done," Gardian announced as the last traces of the devourers vanished. "The threat is contained. Humanity's mission is complete." But the fleet wasn't finished. The ships began to move again, spreading out across space in a new pattern. Points of light appeared between them, creating what looked like a vast map of the galaxy. "This is the second part of humanity's gift," Guardian said. "Not just protection, but knowledge. Each ship contains the sum total of human scientific understanding. Now that the devourers are defeated, I can begin sharing it with you." Admiral Stone's eyes widened as he received the first data transmission. This is incredible. Their understanding of physics, of reality itself. Humanity didn't fail or go extinct, Reed said, finally understanding the full truth. They evolved, became something more. But before they did, they made sure we would survive. Yes, Guardian confirmed. They seeded their DNA throughout the galaxy, becoming part of all the younger races. Then they ascended to a higher plane of existence. But they left behind this fleet, and me, to protect their children until they were ready. The ships began to power down, their energy levels dropping to a maintainable state. But they didn't return to their deceptively primitive appearance. Instead, they remained transformed, their true nature now proudly displayed. What happens now? Wells asked. Now, Guardian replied, I begin my second mission, teaching. Humanity left instructions for how to safely advance your civilizations. They learned hard lessons about the dangers of technological advancement without wisdom. They want their children to do better. Grant's hologram looked humbled. We called them primitive, mocked their achievements, all while they were protecting us, preparing us. The greatest wisdom, Reed said, often hides behind the simplest facade. We thought we were so advanced, but humanity was beyond us all along. They weren't extinct. They were watching, waiting, protecting. As the Starseeker's crew watched, the ancient fleet settled into its new configuration. The ships that had been mocked as relics now stood as beacons of knowledge and protection, humanity's eternal gift to their descendants. Remember this day, Guardian said softly. The day you learned that humanity didn't die out. They became your guardians, your teachers, your protectors. And now, at last, they can be your guides to the stars.